Okay, here's our agenda we're looking at today, and there's just a little slight change, but really it's very self-explanatory with an introduction. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of the legal and some of the other contracts, food department. And we'll have some navigating of the website, how you can use our website, how you can make it easier for you guys to find stuff, to get stuff, I always joke, get stuff from your inbox to your outbox and get it from this stuff on this side of the desk. You gotta process paper, process requests, whatever you do, and get it processed and get it out. Hopefully we can help you with that a little bit also. And then really after this navigating the website, we'll have a quick lunch break. We have lunch internal here. You gotta have a virtual lunch there on the monitor. We'll only take probably about 10 minutes for everyone to go grab their lunch and come back in here and sit and eat and listen to the JOC presentation afterwards. All right. So, and even if you're not construction oriented and it's not in your interest, go ahead and grab lunch, come here and visit for a little bit and be happy to you can just take off whenever. A few little housekeeping issues here. The restrooms are right on the other side of the wall. Men's and women's, obviously, coffee, water, or something else to eat in the back if you want that. Please silence your cell phones, and you have to take a call. You're not gonna bug us or whatever. We know everybody here has a job also. Please don't yell into your phone as you're sitting right here in front of us. Take it out in the hall and take care of your business. Anyway, that's the housekeeping. That's the agenda. All right, where am I supposed to? Let's see. I thought it was on already. Well, it's a green power button.
To the next.
Okay.
That's not the power button. It's not.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Now it's on. Takes a young whippersnapper to get it done, right? Anyway, okay, this is our group. You've probably seen a lot of us walking around as you walk in. If you're online, this is our team. There's 19. Well, this is just our Choice Partners full-time group. There's 19 full-time employees, and we've got a number of field reps in and around Houston and around Texas also that you'll probably talk to or deal with. And there's one little special announcement here. Got one person at the very front right here that's having a birthday today, and it's a special milestone. I think she's 20 today. Is that right, Jane?
Yes.
20? Oh, she doesn't want to come up and grab her sash and her tiara.
We have special recognition.
All right. Everybody, this would be kind of funny.
This is not, I'll hear about it all day.
That's right.
She will.
She was guilted into it. So this is Jane Lopez, has been with us a couple of years. Worked for one of our cherished vendors for a long time, and she's 40 going on 25. So thanks, Jane. Thanks for being a good sport. We were going to embarrass you. And she's just thinking to herself, yeah, Stephen, you're going to get it later. Anyway, that's a little bit of fun we had. So this is our group. Do what?
Said it was an accident.
Okay. I think everybody in here is either worked with us or knows us pretty well. Actually, it's a little different. Vendors, we have new vendors. There's probably anybody that's a new member has never been to one of these orientations before. Okay, good.
Oh, man.
That's good. Okay, and online, I would imagine you're probably across Texas and across the country also. So probably a lot of you folks are probably fairly new to Choice Partners. We'll tell you a little bit about us, hopefully. But this is kind of the little triangle, kind of the diagram of how we do business. Does the camera go all the way across here? Or I need to stay? Okay. All right. But this is how we do business. There's three main entities. There's the member, your customer, your vendor. You're the member. I'm sorry. You're the member, the awarded vendor. You're the vendor's customer. And then there's us, who is the co-op and co-op / lead agency. Basically, we're kind of distinctive in that we are the purchasing cooperative and the lead agency all in one. a lot of purchasing cooperatives, in order to write a contract, if you see the interlocal agreement that lists there between Choice Partners and CP member, that's allows the member, whether you're a district, a city, university, whatever, that allows you guys to use our contract. The term that a lot of people use is piggyback. They piggyback off of our contracts. We write the contract. We meaning Choice Partners / HCDE. We've all badged. We're Harris County Department of Education employees. We're in the teacher retirement system. We are government employees, and we are a government co-op. Oh, something just died. I think there's a loose connection on the side of the computer. It seems like, and you kind of push it back in and it comes back on. What's that? Okay.
Would you go to the next slide? I gotta fix something.
Oh, go to the next slide after this. Okay, we'll finish this one. But the interlocal agreement is what allows the governments to share contracts. And that's really why our awarded vendors are on there and why you guys use them, because instead of having to put RFPs or put solicitations out on the street, you can use our contracts, get your business done quicker and at a good price. The awarded contract is what we award. We write the RFP exactly like you guys do. Same guidelines, same statutes, and following, K-12, 4431, all that type of stuff. If it's construction, Texas Government Code 2269, all that kind of stuff. And then we award the contracts. And then we allow the member, you guys, to just write the order, take care of your purchase order to the vendor. And in a number of instances, we do, and they'll talk about this more on the construction side, suggest the contracted services agreement or a master service agreement, things like that, that is kind of enhances the agreement, the discussion between the two. So go ahead and hit it. No, it's not working. There we go. Oh, geez, that was there. Okay. So people say, what is HCDE? So I use the acronym once or twice already. Harris County Department of Education. We are employees of HCDE, and we are in the Choice Partners division. I think that's the next slide. We talk about it, but HCDE is at one time, if you're from Texas, or if you know Texas, Texas had 254, has 254 counties. At one time, there were 254 county departments of education, like Harris County Department of Education. You see, we were founded in the 1800s. This is back in the 1800s. Over time, these ISDs start forming, like in Harris County, there's 20 something ISDs. Some of these smaller counties, there's one county, one ISD. But over time, these ISDs start forming and the county departments of education go by the wayside. 253 out of the 254 county departments of education are gone. There's one left. Harris County, the largest county here and the third largest county in the United States. And we serve a number of different purposes, but we're a taxing authority. And like I said, we've been here since the 1880s. And okay, see if I can get to next. Okay, there we go. This is kind of a little diagram, if you will, of what HCDE is. And we're a government entity, and we have a number of, if you see the pillars on the top, we call those kind of the pillars, the larger divisions within HCDE as far as what HCDE does. And we've got therapy services, we have special schools for adjudicated use, for use with dependency issues, and a number of different type of special schools, Head Start programs. I think we've got 20 something locations across the area, Head Starts. The CASE, the after school enrichment, where they do a lot of stuff for the students after school programs, things like that. And adult ed, we have like ESL and a lot of vocational type things. There's a lot of different large divisions within HCDE. And if you see at the bottom, that little circle, there's a number of other divisions. We're Choice Partners. So that's who you're dealing with, Choice Partners, and we're a division within HCDE. Kind of like one of the bricks in the big house there. Okay, Choice Cash Rebate. Anybody ever heard of that? First year we just finished it, not you, you work here. It's first year, first full year, we just finished it. We think it's been a great success, and there were a lot of bugs to work out. It's a massive undertaking, and it's something that has taken a lot of our time and attention, but we're very happy to get through it the first year. I keep laughing at Jane because she's just like, she's probably grown a great hair or two from this, but several, she says, okay, several, but it's been a lot of work, and we've learned a ton, and we promise it'll be better this next. No, James found a lot of things just in process improvement, so it's a neat thing. So this is our first full year. It says rebates we generated. Then about 4 to 6 weeks, we're actually in the process right now of doing a lot of things with our business services that they want and need, some new forms and W-9s, things like that. Some of you may have even been the ones receiving those requests for W-9s. So we can actually set you up as a vendor, kind of best to pay you, something we haven't done in the past. We've never paid anything to school districts. We're always working the other way. There were more than 20,000 purchase orders reported using the rebate portal, and that's where the rebate is going to generate. All the data comes out of the portal. That's what we do is we go in. There are a couple of self-reporting vendors. You've probably heard of Amazon and some of the other ones. A lot of the food vendors, they're self-reporting because of the size and scope of their activity a lot. But for the most part, I could make the blanket statement outside of food and Amazon and maybe one or two others that there's a need to receive the rebate. You've got to put your information into the rebate portal as a member. Okay. And that's typically a finance or purchasing or business function. We've got over 400 members receiving a rebate. Don't miss out to get one for this year. Actually, that should be 24, 25. Oh no, I'm 23, 24. My mistake. We're in 23, 24. It'll come out late 24, early 25. Anyway, we're happy and proud of this program, and we want to see it continue to grow. Just a couple of questions. How does it work? I probably covered a little bit of this. I won't keep turning back to that. I've probably covered a little bit of it already, but basically just I can read, or you can read yourself, but you are encouraged to upload the purchase orders to the rebate portal, and then at the fiscal year end, check will be sent using the address on the W-9 that you filled out and submitted to us. Okay, just a caution, make sure that the POs are fulfilled and completed by the vendor before uploading. How often should we submit purchase orders? We always say to do it monthly. Sometimes it's a good practice if your machine can talk and automatically send it, but I don't think anything does that right now. So on a monthly basis would be a good frequency to send them in. Okay, is there a maximum for any vendor? There's no cap. There's no cap. Everything that we do pretty much starts from $1, and it's based. Typically, it's about a 40,000 minimum activity on a yearly basis. I think most people can hit that. Most school districts, private school, charter, K-12, higher ed, I think a lot of people can do that in their sleep. But anyway, that's kind of the baseline for the qualification. Full list of rebate updates. What was that? Is there something, Jane? Oh, that is like, okay. That's something that they can access, or? Okay. Okay, this is something I did not know. I'm sorry. Full list of rebate updates. You can go into our website, go to About Us, and that's a link to find information out on there. Okay. All right, TASBO Engage. If you're around Texas and you're in the school business, chances are you'll be there. We'll have a booth, and please come by and see us. We'd be happy to see you, say hello, give you some of the all the giveaways, all the fun stuff we have in the booth, and answer any questions you might have. We also have a training coming up with Disaster Recovery Services, DRS, basically doing a lot of disaster preparedness. One of their statements they like to say a lot of the times is, we like to plan for the bad days on the blue sky days. It's better to plan when the weather's a little bit better versus waiting until the disaster hits. They're very, very good. They're very knowledgeable. They know how to work with the FEMA, the OIG, the TDM, how to work with your insurance, how to prioritize things, how to save you money now and in the future. And it's a good conference. It's a good little thing that we do. It's down at Landry's in Kemah, Thursday, April 18th. All right. So these are our contract managers. Has everybody, all the contract managers in chat? I think Monique. Yeah, I think they're all in here. These are the 5 contract managers that we have, and just kind of let you know who you're dealing with. They've got a picture of what type contracts they have. Ashley's kind of in her silo on the food side, and then the other 4 are all the other stuff from commodities, construction. We have a couple of different with construction. Michael doing the full jock, and Tammy doing the trades jock, and then Monique and Steve Gibson on the other side on the commodity side. So that's just a nice little visual, who we are, what we are, who you're talking to when you're on the phone. If you're virtual, you kind of say, oh, okay, now I got a little bit more of a picture. And maybe 1 or 2 or more may be coming up here to say stuff in a little bit also. So anyway, we just want to let you know who you're dealing with. People like to deal with people. Legal, this is where I turn off. We will have somebody smarter than me come up. Well, that's a low bar, but still somebody smarter than me is going to come up. Tammy's going to talk a little bit about legal requirements and some of the things that we follow that help keep you legal and compliant.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate you. All right, I'm going to try and cover the legal requirements. So Jeff said I just have to be smarter than him. So hopefully I can manage that, at least have some resources for me. So, all right, so we're going to talk about what are the legal foundations for cooperative contracts. Chances are, if you guys are here, you guys are involved in some way with procurement and procuring legally. That's what we specialize in. So under Texas Government Code 791, that is actually what allows you to be a member of Choice Partners and what allows us to, as a cooperative, to function. So 791 says a local government may contract or agree with another local government. So another local government entity, so that could be cities, counties, K through 12, universities, higher education, charter schools, things of that nature. So it says an interlocal contract may provide a governmental function or service to each party that the contract is authorized to perform individually. And then also federally under section 200, talking about the general procurement standards. If you guys really want to read all that fun stuff, we have it linked for you. I won't bore you with all of that, but that is essentially the legal foundation for what allows us as a cooperative. So locally under Texas Government Code 791, and then federally under CFR 200. So there are 2 different procurement methods that we use, and we use them, I won't say interchangeably, but we use them based on how it is that we're going to procure those services. So oftentimes you'll see an RFP, a request for proposal. So that's done under Texas Education Code 44031. So we as a educational entity operate underneath there. And then for construction, we use the CSP method, so competitive sealed proposals. So if you're using construction, JOC, we use the CSP method for procurement there. And we use that for construction services, job order contracts, and maintenance contracts. We do not use that for architectural and engineering because that's not allowable under Texas Government Code. So some of the key procurement steps, and if you guys are new, and we have a couple of new people here, new members here, these are the items that you'll see. These are the key procurement steps that you will see in what we call our due diligence files that we'll cover a little bit later. So these are the steps that we follow to make sure that we are in compliance. So the independent estimate or the IED prior to advertisement, and then we advertise here locally as well as in national publications. We do the evaluation criteria, so we define that in the RFP. You'll see that in our RFP documents. That's all pre-established and published. We do a public opening of sealed proposals, competitive evaluation. Outlined in that evaluation criteria, we have a team of evaluators who will look at and evaluate that RFP or CSP. A cost price analysis or a CPA is performed thereafter, but prior to the recommendation of award. And then finally, board approval at a public meeting. And I don't know if we covered this, but I just wanted to put it out there. If you guys have any questions here in the meeting or online, please make sure you're posting those. We will have a couple of stopping points where Michael or someone will let me know that there's questions and we'll get to those. So Choice Partners provides legally procured contracts, again, under Local Government Code 271, which we operate under, and also Texas Education Code 44 and Local Government Code 791. So these are all of the government chapters that we operate underneath. For construction procurement, we operate under 2269 Texas Government Code, and then also under Local Government Code 252 or 262 for purchasing and contracting, and then 24 CFR. So Edgar, all of those things, we adhere to all of those. That information is all included in our RFP and CSP. We also provide compliance with House Bill 1295 and Texas Education Code Chapter 51 for higher education. So I mentioned the due diligence documents earlier. So when we talk about that, those were all of those key procurement steps. And so you'll find that in what we call our due diligence files on our website. So this is information that we provide on our website. We make it accessible for you guys after you're logged in as a member. You would just go to our website. So you'll see something like this on what we call our our vendor landing page. So with any vendor that you're going to use or any contract that you're going to use, you'll see something very similar. So you'll see the contract category, the contract number, the terms of the contract, who your contract manager is, and then their website information. If you scroll a little bit further down on that same landing page, you'll see that due diligence file there. So that where that red arrow is and that download button, that's where you'll click and that will open up a zip file that contains all of that same information that we talked about in the key procurement steps. So that's how we keep you guys compliant. We post all that information so that you're able to access that. You do have to be logged in to get that information. Oops, I hit the wrong thing, sorry. So what is in that due diligence file? So like we talked about, the independent estimate determination, the IED, the newspaper advertisement, the publication information, where it was published, for how long, the RFP document in and of itself, the entire document, any addendums. So if there were any published addendums, those will be posted as well. The proposal evaluation summary, a participation listing, so a listing of all of the vendors that participated in that or showed interest in that RFP, that will be published as well. The cost price analysis, the CPA will be published along with the Texas Education Code Texas Ethics Commission, that's what TEC stands for, Form 1295. Those are submitted by the vendor as part of their proposal document. Any SAM.gov reports, so those are all those debarment checks that we do prior to advertisement, along with the board approval document. Contract award letter, the contract document itself that's signed by the vendor and our board, and a contract assignment if applicable, and then any current renewal letters. All that information will be in there. I keep hitting the wrong button. We'll get the hang of this. Okay, so this is all super fun stuff. So we kind of had some questions just to see if you guys were paying attention, because I know it's really exciting. What is the legal basis for using a cooperative here in Texas or federally? No shame if you don't know. And for wrong answers, there's no penalty, I promise. Except for maybe Guy. There will be a penalty for Guy because he looks like he's having a hard time. So Texas Government Code 791. So 791 is what we use to access you guys through an interlocal agreement, or that ILA that we talked about. So if you're in this room, if you're a member, you have an interlocal agreement with Choice Partners. And also 2 CFR 300. So what are the 2 procurement methods that Choice Partners uses? Jeff, you can't answer. You already said you weren't going to do this because you needed someone smarter than you. So I don't know that I can accept your answer. Sorry. When he leaves the door open, sometimes we just got to kick it. Anyway, anybody else? Yes, exactly. Awesome. Thank you so much. You said RFP and CSP. So request for proposal and competitive still proposal. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. There's free candy in the back. Just kidding. All right, and if you have any questions, so all of that is a ton of information, right? And I don't expect that you're gonna know it all. I don't expect that you're gonna retain it all. One of the things that we want to let you guys know is that we're here. We're here to help. We're glad to be a resource. If you have any questions, all of our information's there. It's also posted on the website. Feel free to give us a call, send an email, whatever you're comfortable with, and we will make sure we get that information to you. And if you have any questions, you get in there and you're like, I'm looking at this and I really don't know what this means. We do also offer compliance review on those quotations. More specifically, we'll get into that too when we talk about job order contracting. All right, now we're going to talk about the different types of contracts that we offer. And I think this is where I turn it over to Trish. So Trisha Prestigiacomo, our food service director, is going to speak to you guys on food services specifically.
Good morning. My name is Trisha Prestigiacomo. I handle all the food cafeteria related contracts. Okay, I've been here a little over 10 years, and I will move to the next one. As you can see, this is our staff. Okay, everybody has some child nutrition background. There's 4 of us. If you work in child nutrition, you have questions, please reach out to one of us. Rosie is my assistant. Monica, she's out. You probably met her outside when you signed in. And then we have Ashley Kane. She's our contract manager for the food side. All right, this is a list of our food cafeteria related contracts. We have lots and we're working on more. The cafeteria trades contract is up there. We awarded it probably about a year ago. It is basically, we have like 3 vendors that were awarded. I think Palmer Hamilton, Radius Design, and Edusource. So if you're needing to redo some stuff in your cafeterias, need new tables, chairs, design work, that kind of stuff, that's the contract for you. All of these contracts, I'm gonna say this, are TDA compliant, except for the food equipment part, smallwares. That one is a little different. That one is you have to get 3 quotes. About a couple years ago, TDA deemed that non-compliant because it's a catalog contract. All the other ones are line items, have estimated quantities, they're formal procurement. They are TDA compliant. Every summer, TDA goes into our website and they have access to all of our documents, all of our contracts. They download them all and they review all of our contracts. So they did it last summer, haven't heard a thing. We've never had any findings on our audits, so we should be fine. We just finished our commodity processing bid. We just awarded it, or about to award it. Coming up, we're doing a huge brand new commercial bid for distributors. We're working on it right now and it's huge. It's probably, I don't know, 2,000, 2,500 line items. So we'll be working on that. We used to have bread, but you know that we don't have fresh bread anymore. And then we have snacks and beverages. We have masters. So if you need something for vending, something for concessions, that's a part of that contract. I'm trying to think of what else. Oh, we're working on a brand new smallwares bid. It's to kind of take over the other one that I said was non-compliant. It is line item. It's about 400 line items, smallwares, repairs, and maintenance. I always forget that last one. So that should be TDA compliant. That'll go out. I'm hoping to get it to the April board. Any questions on those contracts? No. I like today because there's quite a few nutrition people in here. It's not always like that. All right, so this is, Janet's going to talk about the website a little bit later, but our side is a little different. We have our own members dashboard for the food side. So everything in there is food, child nutrition, everything in there's geared toward that. The easiest thing, if you are going to use our contracts or if you need information, when you go in and put your username and password, just click that little tiny button at the bottom that says log into the food area only, and you bypass everything else and you go directly to the food members dashboard and everything you need is on there. And you can see at the very bottom, it says set up a new account in blue. If you don't have an account or username and password for a website, you can get one. You can have as many people in your organization can get their own username and password. Okay. This is what our dashboard looks like. Okay. So this is all food members dashboard. We have our beautiful picture up there, our contact information. There is, you can see there is 8 red blocks at the bottom. This is where there's different ones. So the one that says current vendors, it's all our current vendors. You just click it and it goes in alphabetical order. The second one is on commodity processing. So if you know about processing, everything you need is in there. The pricing has all our order guides. So all of our order guides for all of our Contracts are listed there. Then you have a resource tab that has a lot of stuff. When y'all have procurement audits, inside there, I call it a cheat sheet. And it helps you complete your procurement audit. There's like how to help you answer a lot of the questions that when you're doing that. It's really nice. We have labels, and then 2 on the left, they're all the documents that you will need for a procurement audit. So everything you need, that is where TDA goes to download the folders. So that's where they get all their information. And that is everything you would need. But with that being said, if you get audited by TDA and you use our contracts, you shouldn't have to give them all that information. If you say, I'm using a Choice Partners contract, they already know that. So you should only be doing invoices and comparing the invoice to the order guide and make sure you're buying off the bid. So if you get audited and they start to ask you for all that, then let them know I'm with Choice, blah, blah, blah. Most likely they're going to ask you for your participation agreement. Questions on that? Or quiet. Last but not least, I kind of moved this slide around. Has everybody ever been to our food show? I know some of y'all have. This is a great show. It's every fall. It's usually in October. It's at the Humboldt Civic Center. We already have it scheduled for next year. And we're kind of doing a carnival circus theme. If you were there last year, we all dressed up like superheroes. Jeff was in Superman tights. It's a lot of fun. The kids enjoy it. I think there was about 130 plus booths last year, vendor booths, and about 400 people. So mark your calendars. Invites will come out, of course, this summer. So. And I'm done. Thank you. If you have any questions about the food side after, like at lunch, come and talk to myself or Ashley. Thank you. Got it. Oh, well, it depends. Most of them do. It depends when you go to the every vendor, when you go to the vendors, every vendor has their own landing page, and it will tell you what areas they cover. If they're national, if they're in certain regions, it'll tell you where they are. Most of them do. Yeah, some do cover the whole state of Texas. Have another one?
Yeah, there's a second.
Have a second question. Oh, by the way, I was told if you've never been, the show is free. We don't charge y'all to go to the show. Okay, it's for y'all. It's for y'all to see new products and meet with the vendors.
So the question again was, do award vendors work in South Texas?
Yes, I answered it, but yes, I think most of our child nutrition vendors do work in all of Texas. If you go to their landing page for the vendor, it will tell them where they're located. It'll say where they can service, like it'll say national, all of Texas, certain regions, but I think most of them are all of Texas.
The second question was, do Choice Partners, does Choice Partners do their public openings online or in person?
Online. They're in our RFP documents when they go to eBid, when the vendor goes to eBid, there's a link for them to get on when we do the bid openings. And we also do pre-proposal meetings for our vendors too. So like about a week after the bids go out, we do a pre-proposal so we can walk them through how to submit their bids and answer questions. Any more? Okay, all right, thank you again.
I'm the marketing and client engagement manager in support of Choice Partners. You've been here a hot minute. Why don't you stand up for 10 seconds, move around a titch, get the breakfast down before we go back to lunch. So just wanted to make sure everybody was awake and ready to hear some more good news about the co-op. So are we ready there? Oh, we have some stretchers in the back. Okay. Navigating the website information is what's going to make a powerful tool to you in utilizing all the contracts that we make available to you through the co-op. So the first place you will go to is the member login. And Tricia was talking about this right here where it says set up a new account. We could better identify that as being set up a new username and password. Account is what your own entity did, whether you're city, county, school district, university, everything already has an account, but you want a login. And that's what you need here to have a username and password. We don't mind if any of our members have multiple logins because there's different divisions within every organization. So we would want transportation, food, administration, finance. Everybody's got their own reasons for looking at our contracts. You can't buy through the website. You always have to go through your own purchasing procurement process. So it won't start a wrong process within your own organization. Just gives those shoppers a better way to identify with what they have. So once you log in, hello, look what I did. Fiddlesticks. The green one again? I hit the go sideways button. Can you get to our dashboard? And this is our, so you can see on the right-hand side, we give you some of our most recent activity and the events where we've been. And then over here, we have the same buttons that Tricia showed you on the food website. So the food website button is right here on the bottom left corner. That is their own website within our website. But all the other four are available to you as well. So if you go to the first one, you'll get a contract list. And I believe in the handouts that you had today, you have what's called the January awarded contract list. It lists all of our contracts that are current and available. All of the food contracts we group together and they're on the back. So that's not just food, but food equipment, small wares, chemicals, equipment, anything you need. But everything is here on this contract list when you hit this button. It will be a list that is updated every month after every board meeting we have. We do not have board meetings in March because of spring break. So there'll be 11 board meetings. There'll be 11 updates here. So you'll always have the current one. What you can do here is you have the option to download it as a PDF. And if you're in purchasing or procurement yourself, you can send it out to other divisions and say, here are approved vendors to use because they're awarded through Choice Partners contracts. And then you can see that. However, we have had some of our entities tell us that they'd like it in an Excel format so they could massage it, move it around, line it up with their own system, upload it as approved vendors. Its option is there too. You don't have to request it. It's available right there. The next button is for current vendors. And we're just a moment. We have a question, I guess.
I had a question. What if I'm looking at that current vendors list and the vendor that I want to use is not on there?
Are you talking about this one or this one? Either one?
Either one. Either one.
So you're just saying you're looking for a vendor and the vendor's not there.
Right.
Okay, then the vendor has either not been awarded or they're in the process of, if there's been an RFP for that vendor and they have had the opportunity to respond to the RFP, it's being vetted and it has to go to the board before they can be approved and awarded and listed there.
Is that something that I could reach out to someone and let them know? Hey, maybe let that vendor know to respond to Choice Partners?
What Choice Partners stance is, and this is a great question because we do look for input from our members, from our field reps, from our contract managers, anybody that has a vendor that they would like to do business with. We always encourage you to be able to go out and say, please go on the Choice Partners website under, oh, I wish I could toggle back and forth, but on our homepage, there's a button that says vendors. And when you hit vendors, not vendor login, that button's in the white, in the red bar, it says vendors. You toggle on that, you hit that, and the drop down will actually say become a vendor. There's 3 things a vendor has to do. So I would need to register first. And as long as they register and describe well their product and service, they will be invited to any RFP, I doubt it'd be, or a CSP, depending on the type of vendor, and they can respond to that. And we want that kind of input because if it's driven by our members, by our contract managers, by our field reps that are out finding out what is really needed, then we're going to have a better array of contracts to offer you. So that's a great question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Well, we just want to be sure that that's clear because this is the way we try and train. Please, y'all own this as I love football, so I'm just going to go there. Green Bay Packers own their own team. The whole town owns their own team. And yes, I'm a true Texan, native Houstonian, but I had to live up in the hinterland for a season. And I found out the pride and ownership these people have in building their own stadium, pulling up the turf, here, have a piece, all this kind of thing. That's what we want our members and vendors to say about Choice Partners. When Jeff was up here, he showed y'all the triangle, win, win, win. It's for the members, it's for the vendors, and it's for us. And as long as we work together, we're going to build a unit that works well and meets your needs. So thank you for that question, and we're looking forward to it. So this would be your printed copy of all our vendors. Here you can get their e-files. And this is where when you hit that button, it'll be a listing of available contracts. You can search by category, whether it's commodities, food, technology, that sort of thing. And then you can also search on the top bar. You can look for a specific vendor, but be sure you spell it correctly. System's very picky. Once you do that, it takes you to their landing page, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. That landing page will have all the pertinent information you need to create a PO or to determine whether or not you want to continue shopping with them. We have a get a quote button, and I'm going to show you in depth on that, how to save you time and money using this one. It's amazing, and the quick results you get instead of having to run your own ad in a magazine or newspaper or something to get it. We also have the rebate portal here. This is where you upload your completed POs. Once you've already finished the project and paid the vendor, that's what we term completed. When it goes up here, then it's eligible for the rebate calculations. So this is what we call a vendor landing page. It'll have the vendor's name, the area that they've been awarded to cover. So this is national, and their website. But we give you a lot of relative information here to create your own PO or to know if you're ready to do business with them. So you can see their contract number, their category, when they were awarded. But right here, we think this is very important. And that's why Jeff kept saying, please meet with our contract managers, know who they are. Tammy is the one that is over this. She was just up here showing you about the legal side of our contracts. And we have this for every vendor. So that gives you a chance to reach out to us to answer questions. Yes or no, you want to work with them. What is their background? Are they the best in my area? Is this the best for my project? We also have over on the right side of the landing page, contact information for the particular vendor that you're looking for. Some of them have 2, some have 3, some have just 1, but anyone you contact would know about the choice contract and be able to assist you. So on that landing page, this is a different vendor, but the same kind of layout. If you scroll down, this is at the top. But if you scroll to the bottom, you've heard us mention several times that we offer the due diligence. This is where you as a member can actually go and access all of the information that's within the due diligence file. And then we have the About This partner. This is the best way for you to get acquainted with them if you haven't met them in person and help determine if that's where you want to go to work with them. Again, you can see here we have the contract manager. It's different. And this is 0 remaining. They're good through February of 2024. So this is probably already gone out for another CSP again, because we generally try and run it 6 months ahead before it finalizes the contract. If, however, you want to get into business, say like you had started business with Construction Masters in January of this year, and you see that it's expiring this year in February, you would not be at risk at the end of February because it's legal that you started with them while they were contracted. If the project didn't complete for 2 or 3 months, you're still legally covered. Okay, any questions on that? Just want to make sure that you don't not use somebody because their expiration date appears here. It could be that they're being renewed or applying to another contract right away. This is a page that we have just for the rebate program itself to do some explanation. If you go again to our homepage, there's a red bar across the top. It has members, and under members, this is where you're going to find the rebate program. And so it has more information. What Jeff was talking to you today, there was a slide that said updated information. Since we ran the first rebate this year, we had some things come up that taught us how to do it more succinctly, more concise for the vendors, more efficient for the members. So this is just your standard information. There's some help buttons at the bottom and how to upload. So we've got it all there, but it never, ever fails. If you have a question or need assistance, please call our 800 number. Be happy to assist you, or direct dial to our senior director, to Jane, or to any one of our contract managers. Now, when you hit that button from the member dashboard, you go directly to the rebate portal. This is what it looks like. Just to give you a visual, you can do a bulk upload. As we said, reporting monthly is going to be to your best advantage as well as ours, or you can do them manually if you only have one or two and you find it easier that way. We have someone here, just an example, and they put in their information and then they put it there. If you want to see what has been uploaded, we also have a button right up here, manage your purchase orders. That doesn't mean that we're going to supply them to the vendor. All that means is you're managing what you submitted to ensure it went into the right portal and will be accounted for your rebate. Any questions? Michael in the back? Okay. Do you need this? Okay. Well, that's cool. As long as I'm here, do y'all mind? I mean, as long as we're rebating here.
When they go to.
I'm out. One moment. We have, this is Jane Lopez,
Hi,
our Assistant
um,
Director.
So when you go to the manage purchase orders, you can see anyone who's uploaded for your district or your entity. So if you're only doing it for certain contracts or certain vendors and somebody else does it for other vendors, you can still go there and see anything that's been uploaded for your entity. Because we have some that have multiple people that report.
That's great information. Good to know. Michael?
So one question was related to the rebates. If they're using a P card, can they submit that for a rebate?
Absolutely. And in fact, we addressed that in our list of additional questions. But Jane, you want to go ahead and tell everybody here?
Yes, you can upload it. We're just gonna have you put PO as P card because you won't have a PO. And we work with the vendors to reconcile it and make sure that they have recorded it on their end as well. But yes, please report those.
That's all procurement through the contract, and it all goes toward your own rebate. So we want to help collect that.
And I'm just gonna stress, if we can get monthly reporting, it helps our reconciliation team. So that at the end of the school year, we're not coming back to our members saying, we have research to do on. If we can do it throughout the year, it's less work for whoever's gonna be researching it on the member side and on the vendor side. Last year, we got an influx of PO reporting for the whole year for some districts at the very end. And so when we're communicating, it was just a lot of communication going out at one time. So it makes it easier if we're able to do it throughout the year.
Excellent.
And our team.
Any other questions, or does that help clarify? We really are trying to make the rebate program benefit everybody here. So if you have one, let us help.
I got one more question. Regarding the submittal of POs for the rebate. Do you want the PO once it has been sent to the vendor, or does the PO need to be sent to you to process the?
We never get in between our members and our vendors. That's one of the things that we try and build is a one-on-one relationship between our members and the vendor. All POs initially submitted go directly to the vendor of your choice. What we're uploading here is after the project has been completed and paid to the vendor. That's when we get a copy. Jane, did you have anything to add?
No, that's correct.
All right. Did that answer the question online, Michael? Are they happy? I'm glad these questions are coming in because that's why we're doing the member workshop. You're going to get more out of your contract this way or more out of your membership. Yes, ma'am. Just one moment.
So we need to attach a copy of the PO or, because I've done it where you download the spreadsheet, enter all the information and just submit that.
We have two ways. It's called bulk upload. Jeff, is that what you're talking? We have bulk upload. So if you had like multiple, and it'd be just as easy instead of sitting there and doing one at a time. Or if you have manual, there might be a month. Oh, I hope not that you only have one or two with us, that you would be easier, but either way, you can put one or two, or you can put 20 on the Excel sheet you can download. And that maybe it's a little small, maybe you can't read it, but it does say bulk upload. And when you do that, it drops down in Excel format and it's just 4 or 5 pieces of information. You don't have to go into the whole detailed, and you don't have to upload the whole PO. We just mostly PO number, the amount, the vendor, the date. And was there one other thing, Jane? Invoice number if available. Mhm. Again, trying to simplify it, but get enough information so we can credit you with all that you've done. But that's why P cards are still allowed, and just use the word P card instead of PO number. All righty. Well, it's credited for the school year. So we go September through August, but the payout will be in the first quarter of the following calendar year. Change, Jeff, or is that's what I read in your email? Okay. Just wanted to be sure, but it was, I mean, don't think, oh my gosh, it's September 1. I didn't get anything from last year. Y'all give us a second to do a little bit of math. And the checks are cut from our office, from our sponsoring agent, Harris County Department of Ed. So we have to tie some things together, but it's definitely coming and we're not going anywhere. So the money's yours. Anything else? All righty, I'm going to move on. Unless, Michael, you want to check real quick and see if there's any other questions? Nada más. Oh, uno más. Yes, sir.
Is it more beneficial to use the template provided? Is this way there are no issues with them being accepted? Okay.
I'll let Jane address that because she works directly with the program.
More beneficial to use the template provided.
If you're doing a bulk upload, you have to use the template provided. If you don't use that template, it will not load. You'll get an error message. Both of them work for us. The one that you type in, usually you can attach a PDF of your PO. So that's very helpful, but we know that that's maybe not feasible when you're submitting 100, 200 POs.
They did their spreadsheet with the correct 4 columns in there. They have exactly.
The question, please.
Jeff is asking if you can create your own Excel. We want you to download and use this one. It reads the column names, and that's what it matches it to.
One more question, just a moment.
Real quick, since this is being brought up and I meant to say it earlier. So on the food contracts, I know Jeff talked about in the very beginning that they're self-reporting. Not all of them are self-reporting. Okay. If you submitted a participation agreement with us and you selected who you were going to use, most likely they're self-reporting, like our commercial distributor bid with Gordon's or Labatt, our produce bid, ice cream bids, the chemical bids, missing somebody, produce, I said that, dairy. Those are all self-reporting. If you're using our cafeteria trades contract, the food equipment contract, the new smallwares that we're putting out, we don't know who's using that contract. So you need to submit your POs for that. Technology. We have a technology bid for like POS materials and stuff. That makes sense? Because when we started doing this, it's like, we can't keep up with, when you have a dairy, if you're using our dairy contract, we can't keep up with as many POs as you do, right? You're getting weekly, twice weekly deliveries. So the food's just a little differently. So we already have that information. So when, let's say Labatt gives us their and we see everybody on there. We'll see all the districts, Willis ISD, and we know how much was spent. So we just use the reports that they're giving us. That's why they're self-reporting. Any questions on that? Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Is quarterly, is quarterly reporting okay?
It's okay. It is not preferred, but if that's the best that works for you, and we're not going to say no, Jane will have more.
Yes, monthly would be would help us avoid the influx at the end of the year. Would work for us. Also, our cutoff date for reporting will be September 15th, 2024, so that we're able to then reconcile everything, do the communications with your vendors, and process the payments. It will be September 15th.
Right. We're not going as far into the future as we were before.
That way we can get you paid much sooner. Somebody had a question?
She did, front row.
What about weekly reporting? Like,
Hey, we don't mind if you don't.
We love you.
Yes,
Get
yes.
right away.
Another crown and more candy in the back, I believe, is what Tammy said. Yes, we understand that some districts are different sizes. We understand that some cities and counties are all different sizes. Universities have their own methods. We're just here to try and work with you and tell you what works best for us. More often, not a problem. Little less often, just be sure it works. And if you have a question, call us, but always use that manage your purchase order button so that you're ensuring they are going to the upload as you asked. One more, please.
We had a few vendors that denied our POs for rebates, and we went back to that vendor and provided additional Choice Partners information that showed the PO was valid and compiled with Choice Partners requirements for rebates. However, it looks like they didn't get credit for that. How do we avoid this situation in the future? Does proof rely on the public entity or the vendor?
So we did have a few of these where we had to come back to the member and get copies of the PO. You have to make sure that you're putting our contract number on the PO when submitting it to the vendor. Some of these vendors were under the assumptions there's one district that might have a contract with them and then decide to use it under choice. So it does fall, we were asking the members to make sure they're putting what contract they're using on their PO so that the vendor can verify it. The vendor is supposed to be looking at that. If they don't see it on there, which we had some of that where the POs did not have the contract numbers, it makes it hard for them to know who you're using. There's several co-ops, there's several different RFPs. So if it's clearly stated a PO, we're gonna do our due diligence to make sure that you're getting rebated for that.
I would add to that as well, and I teach this when we teach our vendors. We have vendor orientation, like we're doing member orientation, and I tell them that every vendor should put their CP contract number on any quote they provide a member. That way it's solidified all the way across. So if you receive a quote, and I didn't mean to preempt your question, but we try and cover it on both bases because we're for all of us together, right? If you receive a quote from a vendor that says it's now back the truck up here a sec. This gentleman sitting here that's going to chit chat with y'all is going to go over Jock, and I learned this verbiage from him, but I'm probably saying it Texican my way. Anyway, it's the form of procurement is on the vendor, on the member, and y'all and the customer. So you're their customer, y'all are our member. It's the form of procurement is on you. If you call them up and say, hey, I just want a quote, they're going to do whatever is best for them. If you call and say, I just want a co-op quote, they're going to use whatever quote they want of any of the many co-ops that are available out there. Unfortunately, but it happens. But if you want stringent, compliant procurement, that's why you use Choice. When you call them up, tell them very directly, I would like a quote through your Choice Partners contract. So you set the precedent there. When they respond with their quote, their contract number and the name Choice Partners should be on there. If you know they're dealing in good faith, but perhaps their estimator in their office just didn't do it, just push it back across the table and said, thank you, but I'll wait until you can make it where it's compliant for me to receive the quote stating I'm choosing Choice Partners and I want Choice Partner pricing. To that end, this is good news for y'all. We have what's called quote evaluators just, they're not called quote evaluators, but what is Mary's quality assurance or? There you go. Contract compliance specialist. I used to know that. Y'all give me a minute. But I'm just saying there's a lot going on today, but that's in y'all's favor. It also helps the vendors, but that's in y'all's favor. If you get a quote that you're not sure is in line with the pricing through our contract, y'all can just say, hey, hello, please review this for me. I want to be sure. We don't develop a scope of work. We don't say, oh, you should ask for that or you should ask for that. We just review the details in alignment legally. Okay. And I will tell you 99 times out of 10, and I'm hoping this is the way, our vendors are totally wonderful and doing it according to contract, but sometimes things happen, right? It's okay to ask for a review. But if you start in the beginning, laying out who you want to use, how you want to procure, only accepting quotes that have the CP contract number and our name, it helps to do both. Let's just go there. It does. And then you get a PO to them that has all that information on there. You should be audit proof and you should be rebate available, and it should negate a lot of the problems that might have happened this first year round. Okay. And we're happy for other questions. And yes, ma'am. Oh, timeout. Y'all want to, do you want my microphone? Okay, just a second. Okay. It's going ever so slow.
I didn't know who was.
We're getting there.
I'm just wondering where you would submit that for review.
When you go to our homepage, there's an About Us button. And when you do a drop down, you'll see Contact Us. And under that contact, there's a list of all of our employees. If you hit a name, it turns into an email and our phone number is beside there. You can either start with the 800 number, or the lady's name is Mary Causey, or you might call her boss, Steve Kendrick.
Contract manager listed for that contract.
First, okay, before Mary. Okay, correction, reverse. We'd ask you to go to the contract manager of the vendor you're dealing with. Tell them you'd like a review, and then we'll internally get it around and they'll tell you how to get it to them for review. We'll review it and get you the results back. Email the contract manager for the vendor that you're dealing with. And remember how I showed you on the landing page, each vendor has a CP contract manager listed on the left-hand side? That's who we would ask you would send the request to for a quote review.
We'll go over this in more depth in the job training.
Right. It is not behind username and password. When you just pull up vendors, even if you don't log in, you just type in the name of the vendor you're dealing with. Their landing page will come up and our CP contract manager assigned to them will show up, and that's your information for email and phone call. Okay. And this will be addressed a little bit more later after we take a quick break for lunch. Stephen is going to go over some more of this. These are great questions, y'all. And just, it's a great way for everybody to learn instead of just sitting and watch. I gave y'all a chance to stand up and shake it out, but okay. So pardon me, I'm not through yet. So, no, I didn't hear what you said, but y'all just have questions and this is wonderful. We just want everybody to be involved and get your information. That's why y'all came. Is there anything else now? Are we going to say moving on and we'll catch them at the end? Michael, all good? Okay. Oh, fiddlesticks. I need some help, please. Slowly. Thank you. This is what the bulk upload looks like. So you can see this is what Jane said. Please use our form, not your own. So be it. It's just a few pieces of information. Next. Now, here's the good part. This is fun part. Jeff used to call this the fun button. It's the get a quote. And what it does is, again, even though co-op buying, it saves you time and money, this does as well because it's very succinct. You're only going to be able to request quotes from awarded CP vendors. So if you want to shop outside of that, but then you take what you get, right? Not knocking any vendors, just saying that we know how compliant we are. So shopping through our vendors with Get a Quote, you just start with on that awarded contract list you have. We're going to do the same thing. This mirrors what's on our website. Those are the titles of the contracts. The next button is pick a vendor that's within that contract type you want. And then you have a button right here that says product or service. That's where you describe it fully. If you have been looking for a product and you already have the specifications for it, you do not have to retype all of those. You can say, please quote a refrigerator per attached specs. Whoop, buzz down here and it says upload. Can't be more than, oh, we took that off. Is it 10 kilobytes, megabytes? It's some little thingy, but it's big enough to get whatever you need. Or if you're trying to match something, what if your superintendent said, I want another piece of cherry wood to match what I've already got in my office? And you're like, how do you call cherry? Is it pink? Is it red? Is it rosy? Upload a picture here. And we're just saying, even like if you were shopping for something you were doing in a break room, anything, you want it to be compliant, you can put it here and just say per attached. But then you fill out your name. And this is where I was saying more than one login per entity helps you, because if you were told by your facilities person that this break room A needs a new refrigerator and you're like, I don't know the specifications. Does it go on a cabinet? Is it right door, left door opening, blah, blah, blah. You're saying like, you go shopping and just let me know what it is. And in procurement, I'll buy it for you, right? So they put in their name and email. They tell down here, this is the important button that says when you want that product or service in-house. Now, our vendors know, and it's in their contract, that if they get a quote like this, a quote request, they must respond within 48 hours. So you don't have to worry about that. If you request 5 quotes from 5 of our vendors and you only get 3 back, don't reach out to the 2 that didn't. Call us. Call us at the 800 number or call Jeff, myself, or Jane. We will find out who didn't respond and we'll reach out. It could just be a technical glitch, but we'll help you with that. But you will get those within 48 hours. This tells them when you need it. So if a vendor has what you need, but they can't meet your timeline, they can respond and say, thanks for considering me. I can get it, but it's going to take longer. Are you still open to a quote? It starts a dialogue. Or they can say, thank you, not this time, but consider me in the future. Now, you as a buyer know that sometimes you're required to do 3 quotes. We don't understand with co-op buying it's not necessary, but it is required by some of our entity members. So if that's the case and you get a response that says, thank you, but no, that's a response, right? And if 2 others say yes, and here's a price and here's a price, then you've got your 3 quotes. So that's how we train our vendors, but this is what's available to you. So you just go through all of this, options available to upload, and the vendors are required to respond in 48 hours. So I just want to run by a few things. I told you about that About Us button on the homepage. On the drop down, there's some FAQs here that if you review that, you might be very surprised that it provides probably 75 to 85% of the questions you might have. If you're new to co-op pricing, or if you're already using co-ops, but you want to get something drilled down, we have a lot of information there. And you can see our whole list right here of what's available. This is that contact list that's also there under that same button About Us. And it has everyone's name that if you hit it, it turns into an email, or you can reach us by phone. We just want to make sure that everything is under at your fingertips for you to be able to use us. So if this, I think that's the last one. I need you to do this. If there's anyone either online or here that does not want to stay and hear the job portion of our presentation, which is job order contracting, all under the construction site, please take the time to do our survey, either here online. You see the QR code. It's on the tables in front of you. You're still welcome to please stay for lunch and listen, or if you need to jet, everybody's got things going on. Just fill out the survey, grab some lunch and adios. And those online, if you'll give us just a few minutes, we're gonna regroup right after people get their lunch. 11:30, that's what I've been told, although we had a bunch of questions, but we're gonna do it quick. So thank you very much.
I just go back to the previous slide for a minute.
I think.
Yes, please start over.
Wait, we're gonna start over. That was so much fun. We're gonna start it over. Also, we had some technical difficulties, so appreciate you guys hanging with us just a minute. I apologize. Got a couple of different
Yeah.
sound issues happening here, so to start over, my name is Tammy Cyrus. I'm the contract manager here at Choice Partners. I handle the trade job order contracts and also have Stephen Kendrick here.
I'm Assistant Director of Facilities and Construction. I gave a little bit of history about my work. I was an electrician for 9 years, working for a general contractor. I then went to work for Santa Fe ISD. I was with them for 6 years as their Assistant Director of Maintenance and Operations. And then Harris County Department of Ed recruited me to come over to oversee the legal compliance of facility contracts, construction contracts, and the purchasing requirements.
And to recap, I was not nor ever an electrician.
Oh, come on.
I know, I know, surprise. I was actually out there doing the pavement and the jackhammering. No, I did procurement. So that's kind of my background in dealing with facilities and trade jock. So today we're going to talk about why would you use a job order contract? Maintenance versus construction. So kind of the two different aspects there of job order contracting.
And why that's important.
Why
There's
is
a
that
different
important?
set of laws for maintenance versus construction.
We're also going to talk about trade jock and quoting versus bidding and what that means. And then how to, and most importantly, legally use a Choice Partners job order contract.
And just to be clear, 99% of everything we tell you today applies to job order contracting, and it has nothing to do with Choice Partners. Okay, there may be one or two things that we cover as far as which price book we use or what pricing column that is specific to Choice. But 99% of everything we cover today applies to whether you're using a Choice Partners job contract, another cooperative contract, or your own internal job contract.
So some of the things that we're going to talk about, and I'm sure that you guys have heard these before. These are some of our favorites, the common phrases that we hear when we're talking about jock. Well, that's not really right? But that's always the way that we've done it. So that's one of my favorites, just kind of industry wide. I love that one. It was like that when I got here. That's what we've always done, but this is what it was like that. It's not fine. It was like that when I got here. Okay, so I know it's not right? But it's just normal for us. Like this is what we do. So these are some things that you might hear. Oh, and that part of it, no, there's a whole other department that's responsible for that. So anybody heard any of those things? I mean, maybe you don't even do jock, but has anybody heard any of those things? Okay, I'm seeing some head shaking and some agreement. I'm sure online there's probably some head shaking too.
And we're really going to hammer on this number 4. Another department is responsible for that. Most of the time when we're working with members and they're having issues or compliance issues, what we find is that nobody is making the determination whether or not to use a maintenance contract or a construction contract. Nobody's verifying that that contract actually covers the goods service that they're procuring. So we're going to go into this. If you haven't already, you probably want to talk to your purchasing, facilities, construction departments and get on the same page. Who is going to determine whether or not this project should be procured as maintenance or construction? Because a completely different set of rules and laws apply to maintenance contracts versus construction contracts.
So why does it even matter? Why does legal compliance even matter, right? I mean, they're different when it comes to JOC, they're an entirely different set of procurement rules. So many of you that work in the K-12 ISD area, there's 44031, and we all know the requirements that are attached to that, Edgar, those things. But when we're talking about job order contracting, it falls under a completely different set of procurement rules. So Texas Government Code 2269, you'll hear us throw that out. That's what we operate. That's what we put our CSPs under. So that's how we legally procure that. So contracts that are not properly procured can be voided or unenforceable. So that's one of the reasons that we procure it under 2269. The officials and officers. So one of the things to realize when you are utilizing and or if you're writing your own CSP for JOC, officials and officers who violate procurement statutes can be subject to criminal penalties. I don't love stripes, not the horizontal ones, not the orange ones, none of those. Not our favorite things. At least,
Orange isn't the new black?
I mean, I've heard
I
that.
mean-
I've heard that, but it's not one of the colors that I use in regular rotation, blue today. So, public works contracts in specific might trigger bonding and prevailing wage requirements. I'm sure if you've done any work with public works contracts, you're aware that there are public works and prevailing wage requirements. So we include those in our contracts. That's something to keep in mind. So any legal mistakes can obviously delay projects, and we're talking about maintenance projects, large or just minor construction projects. Time is obviously of the essence, so we definitely don't want to delay it. So that's one of the benefits of using a Choice Partners JOC contract is that piece has already been done for you. And any delay in projects obviously will jeopardize your budget on the whole and then may result in some cost overruns. So nobody wants to hear at the end of the project, well, we ran into this, and this, right? So we're trying to keep costs down. And then lastly, there's subject to governmental entity, they will subject your governmental entity. So if you're not legally compliant, your governmental entity that you work for is subject to financial liability. So if you're not looking out for those things, you could potentially subject your agency to financial liability. So that could be, if you're not looking out for bonds and things of that nature, it could end up, hey, we got subcontractor Joe who came over here and said, hey, we never got paid. Remember that job that we did for such and such ISD? We never got paid for that. Well, if you have bonds in place, then they're able to go back and file on those bonds. But if not, and they say, well, we did the work for you guys, and even if your district paid them, you would still be on the hook to that subcontractor if there are no bonds in place to protect you.
Yeah. And a little bit, about 2 slides later, we're going to go over a few examples to really help drive this home.
Sorry, apparently I'm getting ahead of myself here.
Oh, no.
So JOC, which is job order contracting, and IDIQ, which you will see also is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. So it's not considered time and materials if you're providing construction services. So we'll get into it a little bit later, but there are 2 different methods that we use at Choice Partners. But when we're talking about minor construction, it is
So basically what this graphic is showing is that if you are procuring time and construction services through a cooperative, the state of Texas no longer allows time and material pricing or time and materials contracts. Okay, they use time and materials for maintenance, but it cannot be used for construction.
Thank you. Oops.
Yeah.
There we go. So job order contracting is a procurement method used for maintenance, repair, alteration, renovation, remediation, or minor construction of facilities when the work is of a recurring nature, but the delivery times, types, and quantities that are required are indefinite. So that's as defined by Texas Government Code 2269. So we talked about job order contracting being done under a separate procurement. That's Texas Government Code, that's the statute that deals with job order contracting, and that's how we're able to procure that.
Yes, and one thing I'd like to add for our online viewers, if you are outside of the state of Texas, your procurement laws might be different or slightly different. There's a few states that do not allow the use of job order contracting. There's one state, Arizona, that has a very completely different set of laws. They don't have a unit price book. So please, we'll try to make those distinctions, but it's very hard to make distinctions for all 50 states in a 45-minute presentation. But we'll try to let you know what is specific to Texas, and then you may want to look into it further to know the guidelines in your state.
Good information. Thank you.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about JOC and maintenance versus construction, there are a couple of factors to consider. So again, we procure that in kind of a twofold fashion. So we procure maintenance under Texas Education Code 44031 and minor construction for JOC under Texas Government Code 2269. So a lot of times, you know, when we got to that fourth point a little while ago that said, well, there's another department that's responsible for that. And Stephen's talking about how do we determine, or who is determining whether it's maintenance versus construction. So I couldn't tell you who is going to determine that. That really does vary agency by agency. But one of the things to consider when you are making that determination, or whomever is responsible for making that determination, is to look at the project and understand, are we doing like for like? Are we taking out something and replacing it with the exact same? So not new or upgraded. And a lot of times I'll hear, well, yeah, no, we're taking out this chiller and replacing it with the same chiller. Okay, so you're replacing it with the same 20 or 25-year-old chiller, or you're replacing it with that same chiller that's a 25-ton chiller, but it's no longer, you know, 1993. Now we're replacing it with, you know, a 2024 chiller that has the same specifications. So the difference there being that obviously there have been some advancements between the 1990s and 2024, or as my kids like to tell me, the late 1900s. So that's really amazing when they tell me that. But obviously there are some advances that have been made there, right? So any changes or upgrades to that, to that piece of equipment would mean that it is no longer like for like. It is no longer maintenance. If you're taking out that same chiller, putting in a new one, unfortunately, it's no longer maintenance. You could not do time and materials. That should be procured under JOC, under minor construction.
Yeah, and let's take Tammy's example a little bit further, right? You have a 300-ton train chiller. You're going to replace it with a new 300-ton train chiller. It sounds like for like, except that this definition says not new, and it's a new chiller, or upgraded. And a new chiller has to meet the new energy requirements. It has new software running it. It's more efficient, right? It's over $8,000 and it's mechanical, so it requires an engineer. It's over $25,000, so it requires a payment bond. It's over $100,000, it requires a performance bond. Does this really still sound like maintenance? And the answer is no, okay? If you're replacing a chiller, you likely have to go down to your city and file for a permit. You have to bring it up to the new building codes, the new energy codes. It is not like for like. You want to do the next one?
So when we're talking about maintenance versus construction and determining that, it's a good rule of thumb.
Wait,
Did I miss one?
yeah, scale and complexity.
Oh, sorry.
Physical
Okay.
side.
So, sorry, going back. So when we're talking about, that's the like for like piece of that, but we also want to consider the scale and complexity of the project, right? So another possible application could be roofing. So specifically with Trade JOC, we see roofing, we have roofing vendors that we have. So you might get somebody that comes out and says, hey, yeah, I just need a small patch on my roof. We had some damage, you know, maybe one of the kids was in a biology class and now they've damaged the ceiling tiles or, you know, have some roofing. Okay, great. That's small in the overall scheme of there's a large high school. So that could technically be maintenance. Now, however, if you call them out for that same thing and say, hey, we want you to come out and take a look at our roof. You know, it's probably 25, 30 years old. We think it's probably time for a new roof. Would that be considered maintenance or minor construction? Because we're talking about not just a small piece of a roof, we're talking about the entire high school. We're talking about an entire high school. So that would likely be minor construction. The other thing to consider is the physical size of the object that we're working on. So roofing, again, let's take that same roofing project. We're talking about, you just have a small shed out back that you need somebody to come take a look at and do a small patch on that. Okay, that's a relatively small thing. We're not talking about payment of performance bonds that are going to be involved. We're talking about a very small 10 by 10 shed. But if you need somebody to come out and look at that roofing project and it's, hey, we've got, you know, we had a huge storm, we've got some damage and we've got probably a third of the roof that blew off. That's likely not going to be maintenance at that point because it's a very large portion of that and the scope of that is going to be very different. There's obviously some different requirements that are triggered.
Yeah, I had a few people ask me questions about this prior to the presentation. To provide a little more depth to this, scale and complexity and physical size, if we use Tammy's example of a roof, let's say it's half a roof of a 10 by 10 shed with shingles, okay? It's very small in physical size, that's 100 square feet. Scale and complexity is very low, okay? We're going like for like, we're going back to the exact same shingles, literally the exact same shingles, right? We can probably get away with using that as a time and material maintenance contract. But when I give you the exact same example, half a roof, but now I'm going to apply it to a 500,000 square foot building that has rooftop units, the curbs need to be mopped in, it has penetrations, it's got a slope so it drains properly. All of a sudden that project, that half a roof, has now grown very complex. The physical size, 250,000 square feet versus 100 square feet, is obviously changed. And that will throw it over into construction. So there is no exact definition that we can give you to make the determination of maintenance versus construction. You got to take all three factors into consideration, and it truly has to be made on a case-by-case basis. Does that make sense? Clear as mud?
So that's one of the fun pieces
Yes.
about this is that there is no exact statute that speaks to consider this, this, and this in order to do that. This is based off of OSHA's letter to Raymond Knob.
Now, one thing to note, if you're torn between is it maintenance, is it construction? Job order contracts cover both. They cover maintenance and construction. If you go back and look at the definition in an earlier slide, it includes both. A time and material maintenance contract only includes maintenance, okay? So that's like replacing belts or tightening belts, cleaning coils, replacing contactors. It's not replacing an entire unit, but a component within the unit that has failed. That's maintenance.
So a good rule of thumb, when you're procuring those maintenance service contracts under 2269, as opposed to maybe a non-2269 like Texas Education Code 44031, like for ISDs, maintenance and routine contracts could include significant replacements. So if you have a contractor coming out and doing quarterly inspections on your units, could you use a time and materials contract? You could, but that could run into, maybe they're getting out there, they're doing their routine inspections and find that there is a whole new unit that needs to be replaced. And maybe the feasibility of replacing that one unit is just not fiscally responsible. Maybe it's so old that it's just, hey, you probably would do better by replacing this. Now, if you procured that just under a 4431 or a time and materials contract, the problem you run into by not using a job order contract is you literally have to stop. You cannot use that same contract to go in and replace or install that new unit. So that's one of the benefits of using a job order contract with that two-piece approach. So repairs will be performed by laborers, workers, or mechanics who would be required to furnish performance or payments bond and would be entitled to minimum prevailing wage under public laws. So keep that in mind when you're doing those contracts. If you're doing a time and materials, you need to make sure that that's legally compliant, that those prevailing wage laws are referenced, that you're looking out for those. And there is also a potential for repair that could require the services of an architect or engineer so that $8,000 threshold that Stephen talked about. You need to make sure that if there's slope involved, that you have someone who's going to look at the engineering piece of that. So again, when you're doing time and materials, it's a literal stop point. You would have to go back out and re-procure that.
Yep. And these rules of thumb, they actually came directly from our attorney. For those of you that don't know, HCDE actually is a school district. We have our own schools that we maintain. We use these Choice Partners contracts to do job order contracting on all of our own buildings. And this is some guidance that our attorney has given us to follow when making that decision, as well as those 3 criteria previously. Now, I would like to give an example of how this could impact you. A school district locally, do y'all remember back BYOD, bring your own device? It was a huge initiative where you get an electronic device into every student's hand, right? School district procured it as time and material. It was just a service. The cabling subcontractor did not get paid and went back to the school district and said, hey, I need your payment bond. School district said, we didn't get a payment bond. This is a technology project. This isn't a construction project. We're only required to get it if it's a construction project. The contractor said, okay, we'll see you in court. It did go to court, and the judge ruled that all the additional cabling was new to upgrade their Wi-Fi network, that it was very large in scale and complexity because it was district-wide, and the physical size was large because it was district-wide. That school district lost that lawsuit. They had to go back to their board and explain why they had to pay for that project twice. Because they didn't deem it construction, so they did not withhold retainage. They had already paid that contractor in full. And now they have to go back and pay that subcontractor in full. So what happens if you fail to get a bond or you make the wrong decision? The answer is you stand in place of the surety. If you fail to get the bond and something happens, then you have to stand in place of that surety and pay it out.
Which would mean you have to pay it twice. And
That's right.
I don't know
That's
any
right.
governing board that loves to hear that.
And that's why this decision is so important. And it's why it is so important to make sure that someone in your team is making that decision, whether it's the maintenance guys or the purchasing people, someone needs to make it. When I go and I do these trainings and I ask, who's in charge of making this decision? My facility guys go, well, purchasing is. They're the ones that are supposed to verify that it covers what we're procuring. They're the procurement professionals. They should make the decision. Fair enough. Let me go talk to purchasing.
No, wasn't me. I did not make that determination.
And purchasing says, well, they're the maintenance and construction experts. They should know if they're doing maintenance or construction. You know, they give me a quote with the contract and I process it. And then what we find is that nobody's making that determination and nobody's verifying that that contract actually covers what it is they're procuring. Choice Partners can help you with this. We cannot make the decision for you. We cannot assume that liability, right? But we can tell you what we would do in the same circumstance. We can advise, you know, that's a gray area. I don't really know. You're probably safer going the job order contracting route because it does cover both.
Questions? I see some concerned faces. Michael, do we have any questions? No? Okay. Everybody must be soaking this up then. Cautious face?
That's
Yeah,
right.
like that,
And
yeah.
actually, that example that I gave y'all almost happened 2 more times during COVID when all the students returned. Yep.
And
And
so
all 3 were local.
just to plug, we do have a cabling job order contract for that very reason. Because yeah, I heard the same thing. And when I was sitting in my purchasing seat, it was like, well, yeah, they're just coming in to do cabling. Like, why would we need Jock? That sounds way too, we don't need that. You maybe don't, but it's a good idea to have that in place in the event that it gets to a point, right? And no one knows what that exact capacity is since it's not entirely. So in order to protect yourself and your entity, that job order contract is there to have the maintenance piece and then also the time materials. So covers you for both. So when we're talking about JOCs that are procured by purchasing cooperatives like Choice Partners, the government entity, so y'all selects the vendor without having to use your own competitive procurement process. So again, we've gone out, we've issued that RFP, CSP. How many of you guys have issued an RFP or CSP in this room? Okay, I see one hand just for those virtually. Oh, well, Steve, really, come on. Okay, Steve Gibson's our contract manager, so he's issued a couple. But as you guys know, that process takes some time, like 6 weeks bare minimum, right? Because you're advertising for 2 weeks, you've got to leave it open, and then you've got to evaluate that, then it's got to go to board. I mean, 6 weeks is like best case scenario, like you're up working all hours of the night. I think Steve Gibson actually has done that, worked all hours of the night. So, but by using a Choice Partners job order contract, we've already satisfied that procurement piece for you. So, and it is this only satisfies the procurement requirement, not the contracting requirement. So that's something to keep in mind, and we'll talk about why that's important. So the statute requires a written and signed job order between the vendor and the governmental entity. So I've heard people say, well, yeah, no, we got that covered. We got a purchase order. We gave it to the vendor, was signed, we're good. Now, the statute actually requires that it is countersigned, that a document be countersigned by both the vendor and the member or the contracting entity. So if it's school district, city, county, whatever that looks like, that there be a piece of paper that is countersigned by both parties. So JOC is the only construction method that allows for use of a cooperative in lieu of self-procurement in Texas. Yes. And it is also the only method allowed to select contractors for future undefined projects or tasks. So that's that IDIQ portion that we talked about before.
Yeah, so if you're a local government in the state of Texas, job order contracting is your only on-call construction contract option. For those of you that are online, if you're a state agency, you do have a few other options, but local governments do not. Also, our out-of-state entities that may be on here. I know like New York, they're allowed to do design build through cooperative purchasing. It's going to depend on your state. Most states, it's job order contracting, especially for local governments.
So when we're talking about an estimate or proposal, what does that mean? What does that look like, right? So one of the things we tell you as a best practice is it must contain your Choice Partners contract number. So that's that method of procurement is what we like to call it, is it puts your contract number on there. That is essentially you and the vendor agreeing that you are using that contract and the pricing. So when we're reviewing it, we're making sure that it has that contract number on there. But there is a line item assessment based on the unit price book. So unit price book, when we talk about unit price books, there's 4 different unit price books that we specify in our CSPs. So it could be RS Means, Sierra West, Xactimate. There's another one I'm blanking on.
Craftsman, National
Craftsman.
Construction Cost Estimator.
National Construction Cost Estimator. So one of those 4, those are the 4 that are specified in our CSPs. And any estimate that's provided to you by a vendor then must be localized. So you're going to get that line item estimate, and it's going to include all of the costs. And then it also must be localized. So here in Houston, our construction costs are typically less than the national average. So then that must be localized. So using your zip code, and it would be like the first 3 digits. So here we're at 770. So you would put 770, it would take Houston and then apply the local, city cost index. That's what it is, a CCI, the city cost index, to bring that down to, or to bring those prices in line with what the construction costs are here in Houston. And then after that, the vendor would provide or apply their coefficient. And that coefficient is, I don't want to say a discount, but it is a unit. How would you describe the coefficient? Sorry.
The coefficient is a multiplier against the unit price book.
Thank you.
It's basically the opposite of a percent off. Okay. So if I take $5 plug out of the price book and I multiply it by 1.5, 1 times 5 is 5. If they bid a 0.90, they're gonna give 10% off of that $5 plug.
That's
Okay.
50 cents.
So 0.9
Did math with my
times
dollars.
5 is now 450. Or if the coefficient goes over and it's a 1.10, then you're increasing the cost of that price book by 10%.
So that same plug would be $5
Yeah,
and
it's
50
basically
cents.
just the opposite of a percent off. And it's so they can take that number, multiply it and get the new number.
But when you see that estimate, your coefficient should be applied after the CCI. And any subcontractor pricing must be estimated using the unit price book for all scope of work.
And to explain, maybe you have a lighting project going on, but there's some concrete work. And you hire a lighting contractor to come do it. And so RS means out all the line items for the LED lights and the poles. And then they say concrete subcontractor, 75,000. This is a construction task catalog. It has line items for concrete in it. They can't just go grab a quote off the street and add their markup and hand it to you. They have to go back to this price book and follow the pricing in it. Does that make sense?
So we've talked about this and now you can kind of see a little bit what an RS means estimate looks like. So I'm not as well versed in RS means as Stephen is. I couldn't tell you exactly what each of those line numbers mean, but I can tell you that there's the quantity listed there, the line number description of the work that's being done. And then the data release, which is very important because they must be using the most current data release. So this one is an older one. For an example, it says data release 2023 quarter number 1. So that was this time last year. So at this point, we should be in 2024 quarter 1, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so when we talked about that city cost index, that CCI, you'll see that in the next column over. You'll see Texas, Houston 770, just like I talked about. And then the notes to the right of that. And then here at the bottom, you'll see a tally or a total of all of the costs. And this one says 135. And below that, they have a total with coefficient. They've already used the CCI. They've already applied the CCI. So there's your coefficient at the bottom. And then they're able to apply an additional discount. So sometimes I hear from my members and even the vendors are like, well, yeah, I can use RS means, but man, that's going to drive the cost way up. Like we gave you guys this coefficient, but that's really going to drive the cost way up. They're always able to give you better pricing. They just can't give you pricing that is higher than what was legally bid. So that coefficient that you see in the bid tabulation should match what's on there. So the coefficient should still be listed, and any additional discount, if they choose to pass one on, should be listed there afterward. And any bonds are listed as a pass-through. So you shouldn't see that done before the coefficient is applied. It should be done just as a straight pass-through. So can you hear me? Okay. If they had $2,000 in bonds, you should see a $2,000 line item for bonds as a straight pass-through.
Farther.
Oh, sorry.
Corner. What'd you ask? The question is, do the estimates change yearly? That's a pretty generic question. The estimate changes with every project that they estimate. The price book is updated quarterly and yearly. So they do data updates every quarter. To go into this a little bit deeper, I know that this slide is very hard for you to see, but we make this presentation available to you online and it's clear as day on there. So you can go to choicepartners.org, about us, presentations, and then look up any member orientation, download it, and that example's there for you, okay? This is what they should be giving you every time they give you a lump sum estimate. I cannot tell you, 9 times out of 10, a member will send us a vendor's proposal and they'll say everything the vendor's providing, what the exclusions are, and a lump sum price. there any way I can verify all of this information in a lump sum price? None whatsoever. I mean, let's think about it. In real world, in our everyday lives, we go to Walmart, we grab a basket. There's no pricing on anything. We load that basket up full, walk up to that cashier and say, give me a lump sum total. Is that how we do business? It's not. It's not how I manage my finances, but for some reason, when we're doing construction projects, we run with it. We never should. There is a fabulous chance that that CCI location is based on national average. National average in Texas, in Houston, is about 12% higher. So everyone that says Jock is too expensive, ours means too expensive. I said, well, let's talk about that a minute. Why is it too expensive? Where's your line item estimate? I don't have one. I just have this lump sum. All right, let's go back to the vendor and ask for it. And then what I find is they didn't use CCI. Oh, you paid 12% too much right there. And then I go look at that coefficient. Did they apply that 10% off? No, they didn't. Now they paid 22% too much. And so you're right. Job order contracting can be very expensive when it's not being managed properly. When it is being managed properly, though, it is actually very competitive. Choice Partners will review this estimate for you. We have a review process. In the next slide, I'm going to show you what it is that we look at. Okay. We do not get into your scope of work. We do not get into your specifications. We do not get into the quantities. But what we do is verify that it complies with our contract. So the first thing is, does our contract cover what it is you're procuring? Maybe a vendor came and talked to your facility guy, and he's got an electrical trade jock. And your facility guy goes, hey, can you renovate all of our locker rooms? He goes, yeah, I can. Are you on a cooperative? I am. You send us that estimate, and we're going to say, wait a minute, this has got concrete, this has got fire systems in it, this has got sheetrock and walls and plumbing and electrical and ceiling grid, and this contract doesn't cover this work. Okay, because there's a difference between a trade jock contract and a full-blown jock. And we're going to get into that more in a minute, in a later slide. But we will check that for you as your backup. We will check that they applied the correct coefficient. We'll check that they applied the correct city cost index. We'll check for non-pre-priced line items. Basically, what that means is they created the line item themselves. We'll make you aware of adjustment factors. That's where they increase or decrease the job by a percentage based on working conditions. Maybe it's working in confined spaces. Maybe it's working over a certain elevation. Whatever it is, we'll bring it to your attention because depending on the estimating software, they can be hard to identify. And then you get to make the decision as to whether or not it applies to your project.
So just a quick question before we move forward. How many of you have seen an estimate like this? Oh, awesome. We have at least a couple of people here in the room. Awesome. And hopefully we have some more online that have seen this. But for everybody else who hasn't seen this, I will say, as someone who's sat in your seat, it's intimidating. It's intimidating to look at that and be like, I don't know what any of this means. Like, yeah, it's great. It looks like an Excel worksheet that somebody put together and like added up the columns, and there's some reds. Okay. And I see some math at the bottom. That's great. I don't know what any of this means. It's probably good, right? Like it's probably good, but it's intimidating. And so like Stephen said, we do have a process here. We have a team that will take a look at it and look at these for you and help you walk through it if you have those questions. Like, okay, yeah, and it really is, it's frequency. The more you get in there, the more you look at these, the more you're using it, the more familiar it becomes,
Yeah.
and a lot less scary.
And to understand, there's no fee. We don't charge you to review the estimate. We don't charge the vendor to review the estimate for you. We're one of the only cooperatives I know of where there's not a fee either directly to the member or to the vendor.
For that review.
Yes. Was there a question?
Hold on.
All right, I can repeat it.
Okay, go ahead.
I think there's probably variance and complexity of the job, but on average, what would you say the review time is?
Excellent. We have an overachiever. I was going to cover that on the next slide, but I'll cover it now. What is the review time for Choice Partners to review an estimate?
It's gotta be weeks, right? Like this, I mean, there's a lot there. That's gonna take like weeks.
We will let you know if it's compliant or not within 24 to 48 hours.
Holy mackerel.
Now, that's just letting you know, yes, it's good or no, it's not. If it's not good, we will get back with the vendor, we will make them correct it, and then we will send you the estimate once it's correct, okay? That turnaround time is dependent on the vendor. Okay, how quickly they can get their estimator to turn around that estimate. It's amazing how many estimators are on vacation when we ask for it, right? It happens. But we will give you a definitive answer, yes or no, within 24 to 48 hours. And then we will work with that vendor to ensure that it is compliant for you. It gives us an opportunity to go back and retrain. Through attrition, not every vendor knows every cooperative contract they have and what they have to be held accountable to. And this is part of our checks and balances. So review the job quote. This is the review process that we're talking about. Okay, these are the things that we check for. I'll let Tammy go into more depth.
So the CCI location that we talked about, the city cost index, we've kind of discussed that in depth, but that was that column on there that speaks to your localized location. And that doesn't always mean like where you're headquartered, that's where the project is physically located. The coefficient, so again, that legally bid coefficient should be listed on there. We're reviewing for that. We're not getting into scope and spec. The total overhead and profit pricing, we're looking to make sure that that's not being applied because that should already be included in their coefficient. We're making sure that the data release is the most recent, right? Like I talked about, that one is from 2023 Q1 of last year. So if we get a quote like that, we're going to kick it back and tell them, hey, we need to make sure that you guys are using the correct one. So make sure that there are no we're looking for, I should say, non-pre-priced items. So any non-pre-priced items need to be listed on there.
And a heads up on that. Non-pre-priced line items are cost plus pricing. Okay, our contract does allow for them, but depending on the type of money you're spending, it may not be allowed. Most federal grants that I have read do not allow for cost plus pricing, which means you need to stay away from non-pre-priced line items anytime you're using a federal grant. Okay, basically the vendor bids a % markup to Choice Partners for any items that are not in the price book. Those should be very, very rare.
And that brings me to a good reminder. One of the things that our compliance team does as soon as we receive an estimate for review, not always, but probably 99 times out of 10, they're going to ask, is this maintenance? Is this construction? And that's important for them to know because we need to know which way that you're intending on using that contract. And then also what type of funding you're using. If you're using federal funds, we need to know that so that we know, hey, there's non-pre-priced items. We need to keep an eye out for that. And we may come back to you and let you know those things. So if you send in a quote, if you send in an estimate for review, and we come back to you and ask those questions, I promise we're not picking on you. You didn't do anything wrong. We're just asking so that we can make sure that we're reviewing it for the correct information.
Mm-hmm.
We're also going to look at any attempts to pass through the co-op fee. So our vendors know that when you bid on this, that your coefficient should include all of your operating costs. So they should not be all tacking on at the bottom of that estimate, Choice Partners administrative fee. They should not be tagging that on. If you see that, please send it over. We'll make sure it gets revised. And then also any Division I. Stephen will talk about this because he can tell you a whole lot more about what Division I that includes all kinds of things that they should definitely not be including on that estimate.
So Division I, for the most part, is your overhead items. It is the most abused division within the price book. Cooperatives have a choice. They can restrict the use of Division I, they can prohibit the use of Division I, or they can allow full access to Division I. Okay, things in Division 1 are like office overhead, your truck, your gas, your cell phone, your secretary, your computer, your printer. But it also has things in there like equipment rental, forklift, crane. We restrict the use of Division 1. We allow them to use things like equipment rental. We do not allow them to charge you for their office overhead, their secretary, their truck, their insurance, project management, site supervision. Okay. I told you before, we are a school district and we use these in-house. We wrote this contract to protect us. It is not always written in the best interest of the vendor. Okay, so we do restrict it. We know what those restrictions are, and we will check to make sure those line items are not in the estimate for you.
And then lastly, any adjustment factors.
Yep. Okay. Tammy's going to get some water. I'll continue until she gets back. Y'all saw this earlier, but now I'm going to apply it to job order contracting, okay? So actually, most of y'all are over here, so I'll point over here. You signed an interlocal agreement with Harris County Department of Ed Choice Partners. That's per Texas Government Code 791. And it simply states that we can share each other's contracts, right? What Choice Partners does is they go out and solicit for contracts based on your needs and our district's needs. We evaluate them and we award them, same way you do. We follow a competitive procurement process. None of our contracts are solely negotiated. They all go through the competitive procurement process. Does that make sense? But here's where the problem comes in. When you, the member, decide you want to start using a Choice Partners contract or any other cooperative contract, okay, you have to remember that the co-ops write these contracts so that any and all governmental entities and nonprofits can use them. They didn't write it for you and your entity. So does the co-op know what your prevailing wage rate schedule is? Do they know what your insurance requirements are? Do they know what constitutes a notice to proceed, substantial completion, or final completion? Do they know what you're going to require for warranty documents? Do you require wet signatures? Some entities do. None of that will ever be found in a cooperative contract. When you're using job order contracting, you should always have a supplemental agreement by and between you and the vendor, specific to your scope of work and your entity's requirements. If you remember earlier, Tammy said, we satisfy the procurement requirement, not the contracting requirement. This is the contract requirement. When you issue them a job order, it should have the scope of work you want. You should provide them your prevailing wage rate schedule. You should give them your insurance requirements. All those things should be done. What happens if you fail to give them the prevailing wage schedule? They're not paying prevailing wages, and halfway through the project, one of their employees catches it and says, hey, I should be making this. If you don't document that you provided them the prevailing wage rate schedule, then you get stuck paying the difference. If you do document it, the contractor gets stuck paying the difference. So that's what we meant by that. Job order contracting, as Tammy said before, statute explicitly says you have to have a single contract with both party signatures agreeing to the same scope of work, okay? This actually went to court. And the governmental entity's argument was, well, I have a proposal with their signature. I issued a purchase order with our signature. Those two documents are one document with both party signatures. That sound right? Kind of works that way with commodities and services. But what about job order contracting? The answer is no. The judge ruled that They had a single document with one set of terms and conditions and one party signature. They had a purchase order with a second set of terms and conditions and another party signature, but they didn't have a single document with both party signatures as required by statute. And the governmental entity lost that case. All right, Tammy.
So that's why we encourage you to use a master job order contract, or that is the recommended, thank you, the recommended practice. Because it contains your governmental entity's project-specific scope of work, right? And so you will have your specific scope of work. It's not the cooperatives, overview of this is what these projects may contain, this is what they may entail. It's going to be specific to what your project needs. It includes your job order, so that specific project, and the prevailing wage rate schedule as attachments. So that will document what Stephen just discussed. It's going to document that requirement for you, and a document that you provided that to the vendor. Include any liquidated damages. So if you have reference to that, you want to include that in your master service agreement. Retainage, that's not something that we include in our contracts. So that would not be something that would be covered unless you reference that in your MSA or your master service agreement. Terms and conditions, like Stephen said, that are specific to your governmental entity. You're going to have terms and conditions that are very specific that would protect your entity that are going to be very different from HCDEs. And then, like I said earlier, that document needs to be countersigned. It needs to be signed by both the governmental entity, so your agency, and the vendor, agreeing to those terms and conditions, agreeing to the scope of work as provided. And then that will stand in place. So we've covered the procurement piece by utilizing the Choice Partners contract. These are the requirements that your entity would need to include in that agreement to make sure that you're covered on the contracting side.
And so y'all know, supplemental agreement, there is no standard. Some people use a modified AIA. I don't recommend using a regular AIA. You always want your attorney to modify it to benefit you, because those contracts are actually written to benefit who?
Architects.
The architect. Choice Partners actually paid our attorneys to create a master job template based off of the one that we use in-house. It is written for K through 12 education, but is available to you if you want to take it, go over it with your attorneys and modify what needs to be modified so that your entity can use it. Okay.
So, and then I would just encourage you to draw your attention to Texas Government Code 2269 that says an order for a job or project under a job order contract must be signed by the government entities represented in the contract. That's that counter signature requirement. So just making sure that you have a document that is signed by both you and the vendor or the contractor. So that job order itself must be issued by the owner of the governmental entity, must be signed by both parties, like we've talked about, must include the scope of work and the price of those assigned tasks. So a total for what that is. So typically has a not to exceed amount that may look different for you. And also provide the owner's adopted prevailing wage rate schedule. So making sure that that's included as an attachment to document and to suffice that requirement. So public works bonds, we talked about bonds. Stephen referenced earlier that case where, the subcontractor came and said, hey, we were never paid by the contractor. Well, in the place of bonds, you would stand in place, you would be the surety. So in order to avoid that and avoid having to go to your board and explain potentially why you had to pay for that same project or service twice, performance bonds are required if that contract is in excess of $100,000. And that's spelled out in Texas Government Code. So what that does is it protects the governmental entity from any financial losses. So again, in the place that someone came and said, hey, I didn't get paid, I'm a subcontractor, I did the work, we want to make sure that they get paid, then they could file against the bond as opposed to going back to your entity.
Let me clarify that. What Tammy's talking about is a payment bond.
Sorry.
A performance bond is like halfway through the project, they go out of business. Or halfway through the project, they tell you they can no longer honor the pricing that they bid to you. Okay, you go back against them. That's to protect your agreement by and between you and them. The payment bond is to protect the agreement between them and any subcontractors, subcontractors, or suppliers. Okay? Does that make sense?
Sorry, I misspoke. And then the payment bond, there are specific requirements for that. So $25,000, if it's in excess of $25,000 and the governmental entity is not a municipality. So if you are
Or joint board.
or a joint board, or $50,000 if the governmental entity is a municipality or a joint board. And then that protects the governmental entity from any claims of non-payment, like I spoke about in earlier. So for any non-payment of suppliers, subcontractors, and subcontractors. So JOCs, a governmental entity must independently hire an architect or engineer if their services are required. So in essence, you cannot use an architect or engineer for job order contracting. That's spelled out in 791. And is required for a new building over $100,000 in construction costs, or an alteration or addition having construction costs which exceed $50,000. There are exceptions to engineering services. An engineer is not required for a public work project if the project involves electrical or mechanical engineering and will cost less than $8,000. So if it's more than $8,000, you're going to need an engineer. If a project does not involve electrical or mechanical engineering and will cost $20,000 or less. So for structural or civil engineering services.
However, you cannot do civil construction through job order contracting. So just be aware, there's a couple of restrictions in job order contracting. You cannot purchase architectural or engineering services through a job contract or a cooperative contract in the state of Texas. For those folks outside of the state of Texas, there are a few states that do allow for it. Our contracts do not, however. You can't do any civil construction. Okay, the only exception to that is with universities. Your statute does not prohibit civil construction. For every other governmental entity, it is prohibited.
What must go to the board when we're talking about job order contracting? So a determination of construction service project delivery method, if it's something other than competitive sealed bid or any other method. So an approval of competitive procurement results where procurement is required. The approval of all interlocal contracts for cooperatives. So basically, if they're using an interlocal contract, it has to go to their board. The approval of the contract with any vendor. An approval of all contract amendment or change order, all contract renewals and contract terminations. And the governing body may act to delegate all the above powers. So any job orders, one of the biggest takeaways for this one is any job order contracts or any job orders, including cooperative purchases in excess of $500,000. So if it's $500,000 and a penny, it's got to go to your board. So be mindful of that if you're using job order contracting projects in excess of $500,000.
Yes, and I will say a few things. One is I want to say it's our counties. They have something in statute that says any purchase over 50,000. I would say get with your attorney on that as to whether or not you can stick to the 500,000 from Texas Government Code 2269, or if you have to stay with the 50,000 and Texas Government Code, I want to say it's 252 or 262. Also, your local policies might make that 500,000 more restrictive. Where I'm at here, they restricted it to 75,000. So anything over 75,000 I have to take to my board. At my previous district, they restricted it to 25,000. I can't get anything done in construction for 25,000.
So yeah, so obviously if your board policies, local policies are more restrictive than this, you have to adhere to those, but these are just the legal framework, the Texas guidelines. So we're talking about trade jock versus full jock. Trade jock allows for the use of one trade or division. So we have trade job order contracts that allow up to 3. And those are specified on our vendor landing page, which ones those are. So just keep that in mind. And when we're talking about JOC, it allows for the use of all divisions. So it's typically a general contractor. So one of the questions I get asked is, well, why wouldn't I just use a general contract? I mean, they can do everything I need. And that may be, but if I only need somebody to come out and do roofing like we talked about earlier, why would I go to a general contractor? There's typically more costs involved because they're going to subcontract that out. So in that instance, typically a trade JOC might be more beneficial. So that's one of the reasons to look at that. It's typically a specialty. It's somebody in that if you have plumbing needs, you may not need to go to a full-blown JOC contractor. Whereas, you know, a plumber, somebody who specializes in that trade may be more feasible for you, may be more financially responsible.
Yeah, and the best way to identify it on the Choice Partners website is after the contractor's name, under the contract type, if it says construction-JOC, they can do anything and everything. If it lists a trade-JOC, like electrical-JOC or mechanical, electrical, and plumbing-JOC, then it is only allowed to be used for those trades, those divisions in the price book, okay? So construction JOC means general contractor. A trade in front of the word JOC means a single trade contract.
There's Mud. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So does Choice Partners walk you through all those items in such a contract that you
The question was, does Choice Partners walk you through that? Through that process? So related to JOC versus trade JOC, is that your question?
it's good to get the additional contract that covers insurance and prevailing wage rates and so forth.
So we have an example template that we can share. But at the end of the day, you should get with your legal department and ensure that everything your entity needs is covered. The one that we have that's a template was written for K through 12. I don't know what type of governmental entity you're with. Child nutrition, okay, so yes. So y'all gotta follow ARM 17 and 2 CFR 200 and everything's federal, right? So you definitely want your attorneys to go through that and make sure that any requirements specific to your federal grant are covered in your supplemental agreement. Choice Partners does make all of their contracts as TDA compliant as possible, but you know, working with TDA, that their opinion changes with the wind. We actually just issued an amendment to all of our contracts because TDA wanted us to take out the evaluation criteria for Texas, you know, preferential, even though we left it as 0 and there was no preferential, they still wanted it taken out. So we amended it, take that out. I don't know why. The evaluation is already over. It doesn't impact anything. And then we also made a change with how we address the cooperative fee to the vendor. They wanted further clarification to make sure that it wasn't being passed to the member. So we did do that. We do amend our contracts as needed for TDA, but you should still have your own attorneys, procurement go through it and make sure that it covers what you need. Because as I said before, they change with the wind.
And that was a great question. So just for the benefit of those that are attending virtually, just to clarify, she was asking, does Choice Partners walk you through that process to make sure that your entity is including prevailing wage rate schedules, insurance requirements, et cetera? And Stephen said that we have a template document that we can share, but again, it is very specific to your entity. And so you'll check with your legal.
Yeah, y'all will definitely want to revise it to fit your needs. In your case, you won't want to reference your prevailing wage schedule. You'll reference Davis-Bacon. Your district may have adopted something locally, like one of the PBK prevailing wage schedules. But with federal funds, you want to use Davis-Bacon. Yeah, so for federal funds, every federal grant that I've ever looked at, with the exception of FEMA, they require Davis-Bacon prevailing wages. Under the FEMA grant, It states that you can either use your own locally adopted prevailing wage schedule, and if you do not have a locally adopted prevailing wage schedule, then you default to Davis-Bacon. That's the only grant, federal grant, that I know of that allows you to do that.
Okay, and now talking about bidding versus quoting. So we've talked about that estimate, right? And so when we talk about a bid or a proposal, so we hear from vendors, contractors, well, wait a second. You're not going to rebid me. Like I've already bid this on Choice Partners. And so if you're going out asking for 3 quotes and they're talking about bid, and I know sometimes when I had my purchasing hat on, we use those terms in, right? Like, hey, we're going to make sure that that bid is compliant. We're going to make sure that that bid that you received is correct. So and a vendor's thinking of a bid, they're talking about oftentimes a proposal. When we're talking about a bid or proposal here, we're talking about that vendor's formal response to a formal CSP that was issued. So their response to that CSP that was issued.
And the only thing they bid is a coefficient against the unit price book. That's it.
Yeah, they didn't bid your specific project. So when you're talking about going out and getting bids or quotes for that project, we're talking about the vendor's job specific price. So we're talking about when you went out and told them, hey, I need XYZ for this specific site. I need this taken care of. That's a proposal. I'm sorry, that's a quote. So we're not talking about rebidding the whole thing. We're not talking about they have to provide a whole nother coefficient. That's not what we're looking for. So oftentimes that gets confused. So we just like to bring that up and mention that.
Yeah, and to jump on that, I will say, when you're using FEMA, especially with the co-op, they prefer you to show that you tried to get 3 quotes and that at least one of those 3 was from a minority owned or woman owned business. Okay, vendors try to say you can't recompete me. And you're not, you can't, they're right. You cannot make them rebid their coefficient. But you can make them use that coefficient to give you 1 or more quotes. Does that make sense? So you can go to 3 vendors, you can get 3 quotes. It's not illegal. Now, I will say that there's a happy medium to this. If you go on that get a quote feature that Janet showed earlier, and you invite 20 jocks out to your project to quote, there is a real good chance that 15 of them aren't going to come back the next time. Okay, 3 has kind of become the industry standard because certain federal grants require it. But if you get too excessive, they'll stop showing up.
So, and this is an illustration. I know it's difficult to read. So I'm gonna talk you through this one because I know it can be difficult to see. Hopefully it's easy enough to read online. But we're talking about the JOC process. We're referring to Texas. So again, those of you that are virtual and outside the state of Texas, we're speaking really to what that process looks like here in state. So initially, you're going to identify that project, the scope is going to be identified. And then we're going to talk about the delivery method. So what are we going to do? You know, are we going to use a job order contract? And does this require board approval? Typically, you have a pretty good idea of what that's going to cost. You're not going to go out and say, well, you know, we got to replace a roof, like, oh, it could be 50,000, it could be $500,000. Like, I don't know. You usually have a pretty good idea of what the scope of that's going to cost. Need to know whether or not that requires architectural engineering, like Stephen said earlier. Typically going to need some sort of site visit or a walkthrough with the contractor to discuss the scope. And then make sure that you're including that prevailing wage schedule because they're going to need to know that before they can provide you an estimate, right?
And those site walks, they should be done at the same time with all vendors. You shouldn't have one come out and do a site walk and then leave, and another one come out and do a site walk and leave, and a third one come out and do a site walk and leave. And here's the reason. I'm going to use an example that I actually did very, very young in my career. I wouldn't do it now, but I called out the first contractor to come up to my junior high. I had the asphalt washing out where the buses pulled up to pick up the children. I said, I want this repaired. He left to give me a quote. Next guy came out and he goes, well, I see it's washed out here, but it's also washed out down at the end where the buses turn around. Do you want me to add that to the quote? Yeah. Yeah, put that in there. And he leaves. Third guy comes up. I said, look, I got this area here and I got this area there and I want them both fixed. He goes, okay. After I fix it, do you want me to seal it and restripe it to prevent any water intrusion or further damage? Yeah. I want that. What have I just done? I've got 3 different quotes for 3 different scopes of work, and there's no way for me to compare the pricing apples to apples. Okay? They should all show up at the same time. They should all hear the same questions. They should all get the same scope of work.
So then once you've given them all that same information, hopefully, the contractors are going to go back and prepare their estimate or proposal using that unit price book that we talked about earlier. So they're going to submit that proposal to the owner for review. And then the owner or contractor is going to potentially negotiate that proposal.
And I'd like to go over what the negotiation looks like. Okay, job order contracting is not to exceed pricing. You can always negotiate with them to go down. They just can't go up. But you can also negotiate the line items and the quantities. Remember that estimate I showed you that almost nobody ever gets? You can negotiate those aspects within that estimate. Maybe they used a waste factor of 20% and you only want to pay them for 10%. That's negotiable.
So then maybe you've negotiated that proposal, they were using too much. And so you ask them to go back and say, hey, give me a finalized proposal, right? So then you get that finalized proposal, and what you could do is send that to Choice Partners for compliance review. So then we'll take that 24 to 48 hours to turn that around, look at that and get back to you. And I'll tell you, she's like lightning speed sometimes. I've seen her turn out quite a few. And then there are others that sometimes take some time, and not to her discredit, there's just a lot of factors that are involved sometimes working with those vendors. So don't be discouraged from using that. That is a really great resource. And then moving on to the owner is going to issue a written job order contract. So that's that agreement that we talked about, which includes your prevailing wage rate schedule. That's a really hard thing for me to say, guys. I'm sorry. And obtain any applicable bonds and board approval if required. So again, deferring to what your board requirements are and whether or not that's going to be needed. And then once that's done, then you're going to move on to the actual job order contract and actual project delivery. So they'll be working on completing that project as discussed, as disclosed in that service agreement that you established with them. And then finally a project closeout and the owner sign off. So like Stephen talked about earlier, making sure that that's included in your service agreement, that covers what that looks like. And any remedies for that final closeout process, making sure that that's in there. Did I cover everything?
Yeah, you're doing good.
All right, so far so good. Okay, and then some final thoughts. So job order contracts, not all cooperatives, we like to say, are equal, are in the state of Texas, or are 2 CFR 200 compliant, so EDGAR compliant. And similarly, not all coefficients are created equal. So keep that in mind. If you have an estimate or if you're looking at a bid tabulation and you see a vendor that's quoted a 0.90 coefficient, and then maybe another vendor who's quoted a 0.85 coefficient, just because that vendor has a 0.9 versus a 0.85 doesn't mean that the estimate from one is going to be lower than the other. It really is dependent upon that contractor. So that's one of the reasons that we talk about getting multiple estimates.
And remember how I said, every cooperative can write whether they restrict the use of Division I, prohibit it, or allow it. A cooperative that allows the use of Division I, their coefficients are likely going to be in the 0.7s and 0.8s. A cooperative that restricts it is likely going to have coefficients in the 0.8s and 0.9s. A lot of times co-ops will come out and they'll show you the vendors and the coefficient they bid. And everyone thinks, oh, that one with the lowest one, that's the one I need to use. I have had the guy on a chiller replacement with the lowest coefficient come in $100,000 higher than everybody else.
So not
I just
all.
helped another entity do a project. We got 4 quotes. The guy with the highest coefficient came in the second lowest. So coefficient is really a poor way to determine the pricing of a project. Because every estimator interprets that scope of work different.
The other thing you're gonna want to do when you're using a job order contract is establish your procurement method with your vendor prior to them quoting the job. So what I mean by that is when you have someone coming out to take a look at your job and you're just like, yep, we need to get this done. We gotta get this roof leak fixed. Just need you guys to take a look at it. Great. They send you an estimate. You get the estimate. There's no contract listed on there. That's great. And you tell them, oh, hey, wait. Sorry, we're using Choice Partners pricing. I meant to tell you guys that. Sometimes that changes it, right? You're not gonna get the same pricing that you're entitled to if you're not using a Choice Partners contract as if you had told them that up front. So that means that you kind of have to go back and they got to rework that estimate. So just be mindful of that. And I would encourage you to educate, whether that's your maintenance, whoever it is that's typically dealing with your contractors, and let them know to establish that up front.
Let me ask y'all a question. How many of y'all have gotten a quote or a proposal from a vendor and then gone back and say, oh, we need to use a cooperative purchase? And they say, okay, well, just take my number that I gave you and add 2%. They didn't bid their off the street price plus 2%. They bid a coefficient against a unit price book. They need to go back and completely re-estimate that project to actually give you what they contracted to give you. Does that make sense? In my early days, I told y'all I worked at Santa Fe ISD, and 9 times out of 10, that's what I was told. Just add 2% to that and we're good.
Did young Stephen go do the math? Did you just add the 2% and like pencil it? No, you didn't do that, right?
No.
That's not something you would do.
That's not something you do.
Yeah. Okay, so when you get that estimate from your vendor, you want to verify the pricing by requesting their line item estimate. So again, that line item RS means estimate that we talked about with that legally bid coefficient. If they're giving you, just a lump sum estimate, there's no way that you can verify that. There's no way that we could verify that, right? You have no idea what's baked into that price. And then make sure that you receive your governing body approval. Again, we spoke to the $500,000 threshold. That's what's required in the state of Texas, maybe different out of state. Also, it may be more restrictive based on your entity. So just keep that in mind. And so make sure that you're aware of what those thresholds and requirements are.
Yeah. And just because you're using a cooperative does not mean that you get to bypass the construction delivery method determination. So in the state of Texas, the default is lowest responsible bidder. At my governmental entity, our local policy says it's CSP, competitive sealed proposals for construction. If I'm using anything except for that, even if it's on a co-op, I have to go back to my board and or their designee for approval. So I actually have to get approval to use the job order contracting method through Choice Partners contract number for an amount not to exceed before I can do any work. Does that make sense? Every district for sure, I think, has a default construction delivery method, and anything outside of that, you have to get approval for.
And so when you get that quote or estimate with that number, with that Choice Partners number, just make sure that you're including that on your purchase order as well. Kind of ties everything together, right? You want to make sure that basically that they're understanding that they're providing this under the cooperative. Again, it protects you and protects them. Protects you and your governmental entity. And if you're using a cooperative, make sure that you send a confirming copy of that purchase order to us as well.
The most important slide of the entire presentation, right here.
Do you want to read it?
If you hear nothing else, hear this. No, go ahead.
Okay, this is the jam right here. Okay, so the foregoing presentation was created by Harris County Department of Education. This presentation is intended to be used solely for general information purposes and is not to be regarded as legal advice, because I'm not a lawyer. If specific legal advice is sought, please consult an attorney. Thank you.
preferably your attorney.
Yes, preferably your attorney.
Any questions? We feeling completely overwhelmed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
has your brain gone to mush yet? Like, I remember that, I felt like that.
Yeah.
Michael?
What you got? Go ahead. No, you're.
So going back to the template, where can I find the K through 12 template?
They can email their contract manager. Is it not working? Yeah, they can email their contract manager and they can send it to them. I don't know that we actually have it on our website. Our attorney doesn't want it available or non-members can access it because that is a form that she charges everyone else for. But you can get it through request. You just email one of the contract managers.
Is there a Buy America Steel requirement for Choice Jock in construction projects?
Is there a Buy America Steel requirement for construction projects? Type into the chat and ask them if they're talking about BABA.
That member left the chat, I believe.
Okay, we do have some Buy American provisions in our contracts. I'm not sure if we have one specific to steel. I know that BABA is something new and I forget exactly what the acronym stands for. Buy America, Build America, or Build American, Buy American. And we currently have our attorneys looking at our contracts. And we will likely be issuing amendments for that if necessary. Yes. Yeah, we do have a training in a previous slide. Y'all saw it. It's down in Kima. I don't think a virtual option. Are we going to do a virtual option for that? Okay, I don't know if a virtual option will be made available, but we're doing a training and it's going to be for federal procurement with cooperatives, okay? And it's going to cover many different federal grants. Yeah, so you'll definitely want to attend that. We'll probably know more about those requirements at that time.
Who does Choice Partners designate in their organization as responsible party to make the decision on whether a project is maintenance or construction?
It's a team effort. Typically, the project managers are involved. They usually get with me. A lot of times we get with our attorneys and our CFO. And it is a group effort unless it is just cut and dry. It should be HCDE because that's the only time you make the determination. Reread the question.
Who does Choice Partners designate in their organization as a responsible party to make the decision on whether a project is maintenance or construction?
Okay, so if you're asking if who do we designate to make the decision for you, the user, we will make that decision. We will refer you back to the 3 criteria that you're supposed to take into consideration. Me, on the facility side, I might tell you what I would do is if I was in your shoes, but nobody at Choice Partners, because of liability reasons, will tell you definitively, yes, this is maintenance, yes, this is construction. Now, what I will tell you is that a job order contract covers both. So if you're in doubt, you're safer going the job order contracting route than the time and material maintenance route. Now, for me internally, I told you we were a school district and we have our own projects. And that's where I was saying it was a group decision between the project managers, myself, our attorney, and our CFO. Is that it? Right.
Thank you guys so much.
If y'all haven't done it already, please fill out the survey. Let us know what we did good. Let us know what we did bad. If it's good, my name is Steven. If it's bad, it's Tammy. No, but in all seriousness, we want to give you content that is valuable, that you can take back and use. If there's something we're missing or something we could do better, please let us know. And if you want someone to contact you back, please put your contact information because it's truly anonymous. You have no way of tracking it whatsoever unless you put your information in there. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys so much.
All right. Thank y'all for coming out. Thank you, everyone online. We appreciate having you today. Please feel to reach out to your contract manager if you have any other questions, and they can direct you to the right person. Have a great day.